Episode 3 of Making the Case. Do we really have freedom? Stay tuned. You ain't gonna want to miss this one. To another episode of Making the Case. I'm your host, Dr. Jacob Isom, author, speaker, entrepreneur. For those that's just now tuning in, where have you been? Right? We're on the third episode, man. You got to catch up. You got to go check out the first episode and the second episode, all right? Don't get lost in the sauce, as they say. So if you're new to the channel, let me tell you what Making the Case is about, okay? Making the Case is where we take social issues, topics. Now, most videos will be relationship based because I am a relational and educational consultant. Please go check me out at RCD Consultancy. You can go see my services and sign up if something suits you. Okay. But we will be dealing with politics, sports, religion, etc. Pop culture. We'll do a little bit of all of it. Okay. So making the case is where I take a social issue and I break it down from a research-based perspective. Yeah, I said it from educational lens, okay? Because this is an edutainment channel, okay? You're gonna get your education, you'll get the entertainment as well. All right. So the topic for today's episode is: do we really have freedom? Okay. Now, I know this is a little bit different from the first two episodes, but as I just stated, we're gonna deal with a little bit of everything here, okay? So, do we really have freedom? Let's get into my opening statement. No, just that simple. Okay. So a lot of times when we talking about freedoms, we're not just talking about you're free to go to any grocery store you want to, you're free to go out to eat where you want to. Okay. That's simple. I'm not gonna make no one should make that argument. Okay. So I'm not even gonna disrespect you by talking about freedom in that regard. But what I will say is, anytime, particularly here in the United States of America, we talk about freedoms, we're talking about rights. Okay. And we're talking about this in the political landscapes. Anytime you mention freedom, a lot of times our mind revert back to slavery, right? We know that slaves were literally held in bondage against their own will and forced to do some unspeakable things. Okay. Now, that's a topic for another day or no day, right? If it suits us, we'll get into it. If not, it is what it is. So when we're talking about freedom, we're talking about political rights. We're talking about politics, folks. Okay. We're talking about the fact that if you want certain freedoms and certain rights, you're going to have to fight for them, particularly minorities, black, brown, okay, even the Asians when they came over here to build the railroads, okay, had to fight for their rights, etc. So we're talking about politics. So the conversation that we're going to have today is going to be a political conversation. We're going to break down some things for you. Okay. So do we really have freedom? No, we don't have any freedoms. Okay. Our freedoms and our rights are given to us by the government, by the people in power. Okay. We have a democracy. Well, what is a democracy? Democracy is where citizens vote for people to represent them. Okay. We have a representative democracy, which means that the power is in the hands of a few: judicial, executive, legislative branch. It's in the hands of a few. There are over 360 some million people in the United States of America. And not even a million of those people run the government and make laws and dictate things. There's not a million people in government, okay? But we have over 360 million. That means a very small few are dictating things. Where is the freedom in that? See, we like to think that we can go out because we can go out and buy expensive cars and expensive houses and say what we want, that we have freedom. But even there's limitations to your freedom of speech, and we're gonna get into that here in a second. So, for my piece of evidence number one, we're just going to get straight into it. The first thing I want to do is I want to define and break down what freedom means. And I also want to give you a look at the Bill of Rights, what our government lists as the rights that we should have as citizens. Let's get into it. So, my piece of evidence one of do we really have freedom, which my case is no, we don't, is well, government is always in control, not the people. Okay. Now we see in our founding documents, Declaration of Independence, when we first put together the Constitution after the Articles of Confederation was a failure, is that we said, you know what? We don't trust the people enough to make certain decisions. So we have to have a government where we give the people a little bit and we make them think that they got some power. But at the end of the day, we truly have the power. And that's exactly what they did. Okay. As I mentioned, well, a democracy is representative. Okay. So we feel good about voting. I mean, we see election after election, right? People say, go vote. Like, if you don't vote, you know how many people died for the right to vote? The right to vote. Because at one point in time, you didn't have that right as a citizen because they didn't think you were educated enough. Okay. So that's another thing that they're giving you. They masking it to make it look like you really have some power when you don't. Because at the end of the day, whether you vote for them or not, they're gonna do what they want to do. Okay. So power has always been in the hands of a few. Look at kings and queens. Whether it's an oligarchy, dictatorship, democracy, it's all the same. Okay. The power is going to be in the hands of a few. So, do you really have freedom? No. Everything is dictated by something. Okay. So, the first thing I want to do is I want to read to you the definition of freedom, which, by the way, comes from Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Okay. I thought this was a great definition, and I had to start with defining it first before we move on with the other pieces of evidence. Okay. So, this is freedom: the quality or state of being free, such as the absence of necessity, coercion, or constraint in choice or absent. So if you're able to make decisions without feeling like someone telling you to do it or coercing you to do it, you have freedom. But think about it from this perspective. Do you really have freedom from choices when culturally you're influenced, musically you're influenced, socially you're influenced, religiously you're influenced, politically you're influenced? All those different factors dictate your choices and your behavior. So are you really free? Let's continue reading. Liberation from slavery or restraint or from the power of another. I mentioned that earlier. The quality or state of being exempt or released, usually from something onerous. Freedom from care. So if you want to walk out the hospital or if you want to walk out a party, you have the freedom to do so. Once again, remember what I stated. Those freedoms we're not going to discuss because we understand that I have the freedom right now to record this video. Okay? Who cares? When we're talking about true, what you can and can do that actually have some effects, they're political. All right, let's keep reading. Unrestricted use. Let's see. Ease facility. Let's scroll down a little bit. Oops, I scrolled down too much. Let me go back up. All right. The quality of being frank, open, or outspoken. Now, we see a lot of people nowadays feeling like they're free because they can say whatever they want to. We know we have freedom of speech. We know this. Now, some people take it to the extreme. Some people do a little bit much, but there's still consequences because at the end of the day, they're allowing you to say what you're saying. Don't get it twisted. Don't think for a minute they can't come and shut you down, whether it's on social media or in person. All right, let's keep reading. Improper familiarity, boldness of conception or execution. And the last thing is what my argument in my case is making is a political right, franchise, privilege. So this country, this government is telling you, you have a privilege to live here. These rights and these freedoms that you have, they are given to you. Now, to continue on my evidence number one, I'm gonna go over the Bill of Rights. For those of you that's not as familiar with the Bill of Rights, I know you haven't learned it since middle school or high school. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, okay? Which is 27 amendments, by the way. The last amendment was in 1992. Okay. Hey, I told you it's the educational channel. Don't fault me. I'm just trying to learn you. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the Bill of Rights real quick. So continuing on with my piece of evidence, number one, do we really have freedom? Of course we don't, because the government is in control, not the people. So as I told you, I'm going to show you the Bill of Rights. Now, you may not have heard anybody put it to you this way, but I'm just going to be frank and blunt. All right. So let's go over first 10 amendments of the Constitution. I'm not going to read word for word. I just think there's no need to, but I want to point out some amendments to you. I won't go over all of them because all of them, even though they're supposed to be our individual rights, some of them more particularly for the state, like the last two versus individual. So we'll leave those out. But I definitely want to go over a few. So let's get into it. Starting with the very first one. All right. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment. This is where we get into freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, the right to petition, the right to assemble. All right. Now, we know we have those rights. Most people understand the very First Amendment, okay, because it's kind of been pushed down our throat for a very long time. I mentioned, yes, we have freedom of speech, but there's limitations. How many people have they shut down because of what they consider maybe hate speech? All right. So there's a limitation right there. Yes, you have freedom of speech, but if it's coming off in a hateful, derogatory manner where someone feels like you're degrading them, where you can get sued for libel, right? So there's limitations to that. And when we talk about religion, right? So yes, you can worship what you want to or not worship what you want to. But you can't say anything bad about the government if you taking their dollars tax exempt. Why do you think you don't hear churches speaking out about the government? All right. So once again, that shows you that the government really run things, man, not the people. They'll dress it up real nice to make it look like we have some kind of power, like our voting really matters. And I'm just gonna be real with you, okay? Like the thing that they sold us when it came to voting, when we talk about all the time how our politicians and our government is corrupt, and we say all these things about it, but yet we still put our faith in the system, is mind-boggling. I'm not saying that we don't need government, we don't need laws. Of course we do. But the mere fact that we only have a very small people to represent us, that's a problem in and of itself. Now, how do you solve it? That's the case for another video, okay? And maybe we might do that, but we're gonna move on. Second Amendment, we know that you have the right to bear arms, okay? Yes, you can conceal a weapon, but once again, there's still limitations to that. We won't even bother ourselves going over it. We'll move on to the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to secure in their person, houses, paper, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue. But it's kind of like unless upon probable cause. Now, that is the key phrase in that Fourth Amendment, upon probable cause, because probable cause is subjective. What I may think is probable cause may not be what you may think is probable cause. So there's always typically in a law or in an amendment, there's like a catchphrase or some catchwords, okay, that'll give people the right, such as when the 13th Amendment was passed, to outlaw slavery. Well, slavery is banned unless you commit a crime. You see how they see language is one of those things where you got to understand the power in it. All right. Words are powerful. And the people that was drafting these documents, they understood that very much so. Let's continue. We know the Fifth and Sixth Amendments are dealing with the court laws, right to speedy and fair trial, the right to remain silent. So the Miranda rights you get read to you when you get arrested. I mean, excuse me, you're not getting arrested. When people get arrested, right? But the Eighth Amendment, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fine imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishment inflicted. Once again, very subjective. Who's to say what bond is too high? Who's to say what punishment is too harsh? It's always going to be based off of people who were responsible for creating these laws in the first place. Now, of course, no different than how we look at the Bible, the Constitution is just like it's the supreme law of the land, right? So we abide by that. But I think that a lot of us will agree that we need some more amendments and we need some more change. Okay. So I wanted to show you the Bill of Rights to show you the rights that, by the way, the small group of people decided that they was going to give us as citizens these freedoms and these rights. 10 of them. And actually all 10 of them, like I said, are not individual rights. But they want to give you the peace and the comfort and let you know, hey, we're thinking about you. Okay. We're not just going to tell you what to do and pass these laws. We're going to give you some rights too. So we're going to move on to my second piece of evidence. My piece of evidence number 2, or why I feel like we do not have freedom that we think we have, is the government is a corporation. It's a corporate entity. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, for years we've heard that the government was a corporation. Now, I actually have a document that I want to read to you to help explain what we mean when we say the government is a corporation. Because I think a lot of people are confused. Now, when we hear corporation, we can automatically think business, right? So, how does the government maintain the business? Well, through tax dollars, right? A lot of time we know when people get pulled over, they get a ticket. Well, where does that go? Well, of course, it goes to the local jurisdiction. But at the end of the day, the states adhere to the federal government. Okay. So revenue will always be getting generated in some form, whether that's federal taxes, income taxes, sale tax, exercise tax, which a lot of times those come on the form of gas and alcohol and things of that nature. The tax debt already built in. So taxes is a huge part of the business structure and entity of what we know as the United States of America. So for evidence number 2, I want to read to you a document that I thought was very powerful, and it's going to open a lot of people's minds for people who haven't heard things of this nature. So let's get into it. So the title of this article, actually, this article comes from the American Political Science Review, written in 2017 by a guy named David Siepley. And the title of it is called, "Is the United States Government a Corporation? Question mark. The corporate origins of modern constitutionalism." Okay. For those of you that do not know, a lot of our government is literally copied and pasted from British law. Okay. The Magna Carta, John Locke was huge in crafting a lot of our earlier documents. So we get a lot of our stuff from English law and just the way that British used to do things. So it's no surprise that a lot of how we run things now is how Britain used to run things. We just took it and we kind of magnified. All right. So let's get into it. I want to scroll down and read this to you. So the first part says a corporate civilization. In the wake of the recovery of Justinian Digest and the Roman law corporation in the 11th century, Europe was gradually recognized as a civilization of corporations, a dense web of monasteries, bishoprics, confraternities, universities, towns, communes, and guilds that govern the associational life of an energized Europe. Making use of a legal form unknown or unavailable elsewhere, these corporations filled, and then overflowed the organization niche occupied by clan networks and other civilizations after Christianity undermined clan ties in the West. So religion has always been a huge part because at one point in time, religion and government was together until we separated. Of course, now we have the separation of church and state. All right, let's keep reading. Ever since the corporate form has been the distinctive way in the West of constituting, organizing, and augmenting collective power, with profound and enduring consequences for the structure and trajectory of Europe, and eventually the world, not only by paving the way for the modern business corporation, but by giving a distinct form to other key European institutions, including the Catholic Church and the European state, which were for long themselves models as corporations. So once again, what do corporations do? Well, they make money. It's a business entity. So it's operating as, and for any corporation, right? Watch this. It makes sense. At the top, you kind of have your board of trustees, right? The people who making the decisions, your board members, okay? And then you have your employees, your worker. Guess who the employees and workers are? Let's keep reading. Over the past century, the impact of the corporate form on the business firm has garnered the lion's share of scholarly attention. In contrast, the impact of the corporate form on the European American state is today barely recognized. Yet it has been deep and enduring and largely accounts for what is distinctive about the state forms generated in the West. I want to scroll on a little down and get to the meat of it, to the good stuff. So this next section is called The U.S. Constitution is Not a Social Contract. In the common view, the Constitution is a social compact or social contract. In the view of Keith Whittington, the Constitution is an actual contract, and in the view of Randy Barnett, should at least be interpreted through contract law theory. So the Constitution, the documents that were created that started this country are contracts. Now, it's supposed to be contracts between the government and the people. But as I already stated, is the government truly has the power, not the people. The social contract theory of the 17th, 18th century, of which Locke is an exemplar, generally describe the origin of government as a two-step process. The first step, the work of the social contract proper, is to constitute a civil society or people from out of individuals in the state of nature by binding them together as a corporate body with the capacity to legislate and act as a unit in at least basic ways, under majority rule of all members. Now, our government was literally created by our founding fathers, starting with the 13 colonies, majority rule, self-government. So the people created a government, but the majority of people that wanted something, that's what went. Of course, our governments get larger. We combined the 13 colonies along with other states to form the United States of America. So now it looks a little bit, the bigger you get, it's no different than if you're a sole proprietor, right? Well, if your company get bigger, what should you do? LLC it, corporation. S Corp. All right, let's keep reading. Sorry, I lost my place. Crucially, in every social contract theory insists on this subordination to the will of the majority requires the consent of every individual. Many American founders subscribe to this view of how legally competent people are forged, although others held them forged also through lengthy shared history or through alliance and ingenuous warfare. Regardless, the Americans of 1787 did not consider themselves to be in a state of nature. They were well past this stage, already addressing the world as people in the Constitution preamble, already living under government, and they never considered it necessary to secure the unanimous consent of all individuals to put the Constitution into force. So our government never said, you know what, we need everybody involved. Which this is the reason why there's only a small few people in government running things. Because they felt that when you get too many people involved, it'll be complicated. too many different opinions. We'll never be able to truly get a decisive decision if you get too many people, which I don't disagree, by the way. I just feel like we need to get more people involved. That doesn't mean we have to get thousands or million people involved. We just need more people involved. Let's keep going. The second step in the origin of government included in most social contract theories is the ruler contract, in which a corporate people uses capacity for collective legal action to contract with or commission a natural person or ruling family or group to provide standing government with legislative, judicial, and executive powers. But this, as James Wilson emphasized in his famed law lectures of 1791, does not describe the American founding either, since the people of the ratifying states were not contracting with any other person or person, but establishing a set of authoritative offices, an act wholly alien to social contract theory. Indeed, were the Constitution a rule of contract, a new one would be needed at every change of office holder. Since American offices are not hereditary, the people could not simply contract with the family line. In sum, the Constitution is neither a contract among individuals to form people, nor a contract between a people and a ruler. Social contract theory simply does not capture the true lineage or structure or purpose of the American Constitution. Instead, the Constitution should be seen as a popularly issued corporate charter, an innovative but logical step in a tradition of sovereigns delegating governing authority by corporate charter. To spell this out a little bit more fully in the mode of constitutionalism that the Americans pioneered, which in basic form and function has become the norm worldwide. And I'm going to stop right there because I think you get the point, right? So when the founder father came together, they put together a document. You can call it a contract, because even when we look at the court of law now, right? When we look at prenups or when you go to court, what do they ask you? Well, where's your paperwork? Where's your documentation? Where's your proof? Okay. So the proof that this is a corporation, the proof that this is a government, the proof that it lies in the paperwork. The Declaration of Independence was paperwork given to the British King and Parliament stating that we're no longer British subjects. The Constitution declared that this is now the United States of America. We're our own country, doing our own thing. So why don't we have freedom? Is because everything is being dictated by the government. And they have the paperwork to show you. And the paperwork to show you that you agree with it. Because you believe in the voting system. You believe in democracy. You believe it's the best thing for us. So now you have bought in all these years. There's no going back. Let's move on to evidence number 3. My piece of evidence number 3, or why I feel like we don't really enjoy the freedoms that we think we do, is because of capitalism. Now, a lot of people will feel like capitalism, consumerism is a good thing, right? Keep the dollar flowing. You get to enjoy the luxury and the beauty of different products, fair exchange, etc. Right? But this article I'm going to show you is kind of going to argue the other side and talk to you about some things that you may not know that be going on here in the United States of America and abroad. Or maybe you do know and you just don't want to admit it. But let's talk about it real quick. All right. So the title of this article is from a platform called FP. I searched all over the site and could not find what FP stood for. Okay. But it's from a site called FP. All right. So the title of this article is "The Dirty Secrets of Capitalism Are Undermining Democracy." I'm not going to read it all to you, but I do want to pick out some pieces that I thought were really eye-opening for me. So let's get into it. Scroll on down. Beneath the surface of our financial system lies an unseen world worth trillions of dollars. Among today's threats to democracy is one of the gravest and least acknowledged. A metasizing culture of tax avoidance by corporations. There it is again. And the wealthy has weakened national values, institutions, and goals across the West while fueling inequality and empowering the enemies of democracy at home and abroad. Governments need to take dramatic action to close down this parallel financial system, criminalize its enablers, and reassert their sovereignty. The funny thing about it is, who do you think is allowing it? The government is the one that's allowing it because the government is probably the most corrupt corporation there is. Who do you think allows the drugs come in to the country willy nilly? Who do you think allowed these big pharmaceutical companies to do what they do? Cigarettes, alcohol. Without the government permission, none of this stuff is happening, which is why we really don't have the freedom we do. We're controlled by a very elite group. Now, I won't go far to say New World Order and all that things if you're a conspiracy theorist, all right? But I'm just giving you the information that's out, all right? Let's keep reading. Only recently have headline-making insider leaks such as the Panama Papers, Paradise Papers, and Pandora Papers begun to lay bare the system workings. Millions of documents became available detailing the offshore dealings of companies such as Apple, Facebook, McDonald's, and Walt Disney, as well as people such as British royals, former U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, and former International Monetary Fund Chief Dominique Strauss-Kahn. The totality of these revelations show massive tax avoidance, the concealing of kleptocratic loot, and the systematic avoidance of the rule of law. These leaks have given us only a keyhole view into a much bigger industry, which the economist Jane Henry estimate at more than 50 trillion. To achieve their end, wealthy elites and corporations create complexity through the intricate webs of shell companies and incite competition between tax jurisdictions to offer the lowest rates. They then capture politicians by offering financial incentives to look the other way. When necessary, the rich and powerful use coercion. Did I not bring up coercion in my definition of freedom? Man, you're going to have to give it to me. Your boy good. That boy good. Threatening any politician who might act against secrecy. These methods stop national governments from curbing the industry. Now, coercion, taxes, corporation, right? This is all just a big game. So if you wonder why the people who are not rich, whether that's the poor class or the middle class, that's always trying to keep up with the Joneses, always trying to maintain a certain image and a certain look, is because that's all they have. They're not dictating anything. They're not producing anything. They're not controlling anything. So at the end of the day, you just a little pebble in a big pond. So there's corporate entities and big businesses that are in control of dictating everything while you continue to feed them with your dollars. Hard-earned dollars, by the way. Let's keep reading. We're going to go past that. Wealthy individuals and powerful corporations repeatedly choose to value secrecy over sovereignty at the expense of the rule of law. The system requires legislation and tax arrangements that keep domiciled assets in legally fictitious locations from free from taxation and discovery, and the real owner's identity hidden. Financial secrecy also relies on domestic authorities legally permitting and even accrediting enablers, lawyers, accountants, bankers, incorporation agents, cryptocurrency vendors whose business is hiding assets. Finally, the whole machine can run only if entities cloaked by the secrecy system are accorded full ability to operate within their chosen jurisdiction, where if anything goes wrong, they can claim redress. Thus, the financial secrecy system is entirely dependent on what it strives to undermine. Now, I think you get the point. Okay. What freedom? What freedom when the government dictates what rights and freedoms you have? The government, being a corporation itself, also working with other major and big corporations, politically, by the way, because of course they donate into campaigns, are running everything. And how are they running everything? Through taxes, through money, hiding assets, controlling resources. Okay. What freedom do you have besides being free to go to Aldi's or Kroger or Walmart? The government will allow you to enjoy those little freedoms while they dictate everything else. Now, I got a bonus piece of evidence for you. All right. Evidence number 4. And for my last piece of evidence number 4 is, why do I feel like we don't have the freedom that we think we have? Well, it's because of what I call the isms: racism, sexism, classism. Now, we know a ism, anytime, a lot of time we see a ism on the end of something, it's a system, right? A system that have existed for a very long time, centuries, right? And these isms that I just mentioned are social constructions. They're created. They're created for a specific person, or I should say, a specific purpose. Now, the purpose is that, and a lot of time we talk about end racism or defeat racism or whatever little catchy phrase we want to use. We got to understand that racism was meant to put people on a lower level. Classism was meant to put people on a lower level. Sexism is meant to put a gender on a lower level. Okay. Now, we know there are biological ramifications, but that's all I could give you, though. Okay. Because we know that race is something that was created. So, as long as we keep subscribing to these isms and believing that one race is superior to another, one gender is superior to another, and just because you have money, that makes you superior, as long as we still believe in these concepts, we won't be free because we're a slave to the system. And as long as these systems keep controlling us, how could we be free? All right, man. That's the episode for today, man. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you heard some things that you never heard before. All right. Please, please, please make sure you go and cop the books. JacobIsom.com. I'm going to leave the links in the description. Hey, you see what I got on? The merch. Go cop the merch. All right. Follow me on my social at Jacob Isom. And hey, we're gonna call it a night, man. I appreciate you rocking with your boy, and we're gonna continue to drop video after video. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit the bell, make sure you like the video so you can get this in the algorithm so we can get them subscribers up. All right. As always, I'm you, you are me. Love always, love eternal. And we out this thing. Peace.